You're listening to WKCR FM New York, WKCR HD1, 89.9 on the dial, WKCR.org for online streaming. Thanks so much for joining us for Afternoon Classical and later on Bach Hour on this Friday afternoon. So today, before we resume our regular programming, I'd like to start with something very exciting coming up involving the ensemble I am part of, BlackBox. And for my listeners out there who don't know, we're a contemporary music group based here in New York City. And our projects, in short, tell stories, explore social and political issues, and highlight some really innovative music of some really interesting people. But that's all I'm going to say for now, because I have with us here our fearless leader, Leonard Bopp, who is our conductor and artistic director. You know it's true. Our conductor and artistic director, and a dear, dear friend, practically family now with all we've been through. And we'll talk about the group and especially our online concert coming up this Saturday. But before we get into that, Leonard, why don't you tell us a little bit about the very beginning of BlackBox and how it got started and how you came to form the ensemble into what it is now?
Sure. Yeah. Well, first of all, thank you so much, Annie, for having me on the show today. It's really fun to do this with someone who, is a member of the ensemble already and who, we work with in a musical context all the time. So it's really fun to be on your show, and it's really fun to just be able to chat about this. So the BlackBox Ensemble started in a very, very simple way in the summer of 2018. So what happened was I had done a contemporary music festival where I got to know a wonderful composer named Sato Matsui. And she was at the time doing her DMA at Juilliard, and I was conducting, and I conducted at this concert, and we just hit it off and really loved working with each other. And shortly thereafter, an opportunity came up to do more of her music in New York. And so we got together again and said, let's just do the same piece. And we decided, well, let's build a program around it. And so at that point, I thought, okay, what can we do? And so I called another friend of mine, composer friend, Paul Novak, and said, would you be interested in writing something? And he very graciously said, sure. And brought in a friend who was a spoken word poet at that. And so it got to be a collaboration that he had wanted to do for a while, which was really fortuitous. So then we built, a remaining program around it. And to speak to what you said about, our mission, which has since sort of sharpened a little bit into, creating programs that are meant to be a vehicle to explore the social and cultural discussions and issues of our time. I think that was reflected in this original program, which was really a lot about like the influence of, an artist's identity on their work, and especially cross-cultural influence for composers who came from other musical traditions and how they incorporate that into their own work. So we were very much like aware of that in the first program. And I think there was a real appetite among people who were in that first concert, which you were, to do more such concerts. So it really did come about in like a very organic way. It was like, we're doing this concert, and I ended up kind of de facto organizing it, and was obviously conducting it, and really just like reached out to whoever I could get my hands on, and friends of friends and people who were recommended, and we put together a show. And then it went really well. And I think more than it going well, though, there was an appetite among the people who were in the group to do more of that kind of work that was going to center sort of like critical discussion in the new music world. And so we did another show, and then we did another, and it just sort of went from there. And that was how the BlackBox Ensemble has grown into what it is today.
And I just have to mention, when thinking about the beginning of BlackBox, I'll never forget when I got your email asking me to be part of it. I remember where I was in my
Really?
apartment. Yes, it's
I did not know this.
this
That
is
is so.
it's so funny. I remember it was a scorching hot August day, and I remember where I was in my apartment, and I got your email. And as soon as I read it, I said to myself, I'm like, this person knows what's going on. Like, this is the real deal. Because like it was it was so organized. It was like everything was laid out. I'm like, this is gonna be something. I have a feeling. I have a gut feeling. And so
That is so funny.
it's like I remember it like it was yesterday, and we rehearsed in, what was it, the Williamsburg, that library that was almost like a rehearsal space, right?
Yes, we did. We rehearsed in the Williamsburg Public Library because there was an organization that has sadly shut down now. And I'm forgetting the name of it, but it was so great, and it was about providing affordable rehearsal spaces for startup nonprofits like ours, and it was really great. And sad that they have shut down with COVID, but yeah, we rehearsed in the Williamstown Public Library, and Paul came and stayed with me in New York City.
I remember.
I mean, it was a really like, it was just like a really like DIY affair for real.
Oh, totally. And I remember it was like it was so different too. I think that's one of the other reasons where I felt this was really going to be something, because, you know, you never know what to expect walking into a new ensemble and, you know, meeting all these new people. And I think there was this one moment I remember, I think it might have been in George Lewis's piece, or Paul's, either one. And we all, I think, like started on one of the chords, and we all like made the same mistake at the same time, and we just like started laughing, and I'm like, this is gonna be great.
What a strange moment to think this is going to be great when we all make the same mistake. But yeah, I mean, there was a degree of comfort, and I think, you know, a lot of us, and this is true of the new music world, like, you know, we do sort of like, if we don't know each other, a lot of us have like, you know, it's a small world, you know, we kind of like have heard of each other or know where to find people, but also, like, I think it's a community, and I really appreciate this about the new music community. It's like, it's a community that is so committed to the kinds of work that we believe we can be doing, and also like seems to have a sort of like intrinsic like trust in the other people who want to do that kind of work. And I've definitely felt that at every concert. It was like, you know, through the ups and downs, like through the things that went really well and through the things that from an organizational standpoint were like a little bit of a, you know, hair on fire moment, which of course there have been some, like, you know, there was always a sense of trust, I think.
Yes. Yeah, and that, I think we all felt that from the very beginning. And when you were talking about that everyone was so committed to it and so into it, I remember thinking that's what set it apart from so many things I've done in the past. And it's just like everyone was 100% so into it, and you could hear it in the pieces. And I think that's only grown since then. So
yeah.
So with that, on to talking about your curatorial role in BlackBox. So you are a master curator of our program. And you have this
titles I've gotten today are fearless leader, master curator. I mean, wow, but it's high praise, really.
Of course. So you really have this gift. It blows my mind, of creating this experience for the audience, and in such thoughtful and creative ways. And so this program coming up this Saturday is an elegy-based program. And so what made you thread together the pieces you did, the composers, the sound worlds, the sentiments? What made you pick those pieces?
You know, it's funny. I think that, you know, I love curating programs. I mean, it's like one of the most gratifying things. And, you know, yes, I'm a conductor, and so it's sort of our main line of work. You know, it's like you conduct the programs, but you also design the programs. But I think for me, it goes beyond the conducting. It's like I love curating any form of musical program, you know, whether it's as a musician myself, or even if I'm not performing, but maybe just producing it. So for this program, I think one of the things that I've found to be like maybe the trick, is to sort of like not go in with any preconceived ideas, but just find things that are resonating with you, at any given moment, and then try to put them together in an interesting way. So when this program came together, it was like April, May that we were starting to think about, the next season, and or rather rethink, because we had to cancel, all of our remaining concerts for last spring. And we were at this point trying to figure out, okay, like, is this going to be all virtual stuff? Will we be able to even record in the same room, or are we going to have to do like only Zoom stuff, and like, what's going to happen? But the other thing that was happening around that time is like, it was just such a tragic moment in our country, and like in the city especially. It was just so sad. And I think, like, we were all in this position where we were watching the news every day and just seeing the death numbers climb, and it was just really brutal. And I wasn't thinking about that when I started listening to music. But then in terms of when I started listening to music and I noticed what was resonating with me, I noticed that these pieces that sort of reflected on loss and reflected on mourning for loved ones, and reflected on the interconnectedness of humanity, or lack thereof. I sort of found that those were the sorts of pieces that I was gravitating to. And of course, we're an ensemble that is devoted to using our work as a platform for social discussion and sort of like political and cultural reflection. And I immediately sort of found that the resonance there was pretty strong, because this was going to be something that, culturally we were having a reckoning with this widespread sense of loss. And so, this program wasn't so much about like exploring a political issue directly or communicating any sort of message, as much as it was trying to provide a concert experience that could be in some way adequate to the really horrible circumstances of this year. And in doing so, provide a space for people to have that moment of catharsis and be reflective, and reflect, especially knowing that it was going to come out at the end of the year, reflect on such a difficult time, both in our country and for everybody personally. And I thought that this program could be that moment of both collective and personal reflection on loss. And so, as I said, it emerged from just pieces I was listening to. So like, it was around that time that I found this piece, The Lost Country of Sight by Juhi Bensal, a composer who I did not know before I started doing my research. And when I was researching pieces for the season, I found her, and I thought, the work was so fantastic. And then I found this one piece, and immediately that was actually sort of a really visceral response, not even from a BlackBox perspective, just from me. I was like, I need to do this piece. I love it so much, and I want to conduct it. But it also obviously resonated with this program. And then we have Carlos Simon's Elegy, which is the first of two elegy pieces on the program. And this is a piece that does take on pretty explicitly, very directly, the major political issues we've been dealing with in the country this year, or that is to say, our reckoning with racial justice and police brutality. It's a piece that reflects on, the loss of Black life to police violence. And so that brings in another element of thinking about loss, right? In terms of like, not just what we've been through with this pandemic, but all aspects of our politics, and, loss in many ways this year, both in terms of the pandemic and in terms of racial justice. Then there's a piece by Yaz Lancaster followed by another piece by Brittany J. Green. These pieces, I think, take us a little bit more into like meditating on what human interconnectedness means. Yaz's piece is a reflection on their experiences having friends and family, and coming in and out of their lives, and especially like living in New York City and sort of being absorbed in this, like they say something about like like the network of people that is constantly changing. And I thought that was a really beautiful thing. Brittany J. Green's piece is a improvisatory piece that is based on a poem by Yasmina Montilla called Maps. And that poem and the quotes that Brittany chooses from the piece are reflective of, the sort of imagining the boundaries that we arbitrarily or unconsciously put up between ourselves as a human body, and what might happen if we allowed those boundaries to fall away. And obviously the poem puts it in a much more beautiful way, and I think the piece is reflective of that, and we can talk about that too. And then we end with a piece by Jessica Mays, the second elegy on the program. And this piece, Jessica says, is supposed to tell or sort of reflect on, maybe not tell, but reflect on the journey of life and death. And in the piece contains both the solitude and finitude of, reflecting on one's mortality, which in this case comes from a series of really beautiful treatments of Bach chorales that come back throughout the piece. And at the end of the piece, the Bach chorale repeats until it just dies out, and the various people who are singing and or playing it slowly fade out with each repetition. But then the piece also contains the excitement and joy and jubilant moments of life. And so it contains both that ecstatic and mortal point of view. And so, yeah, the program just really sort of came together. It came out of a love primarily for these pieces and these composers. And then it felt to me like this combination would be a really fitting opportunity with which to end the year, for both us as musicians, but also for the audience, of course.
Yes, and it's definitely a very powerful program, and hearing them one after the other is really fascinating, and it conjures up all these feelings, and I can't wait for the concert when we all get to hear that in culmination. So before we get into the next piece we'll play, let's touch on something that we were talking about a little bit before, the elephant in the room for all of us, which is COVID. And being part of an ensemble during this time, in your case leading an ensemble during this time, and because ensembles, institutions, artists of all kinds are navigating their way through with trying to maintain a presence and continue contributing, and via online platforms or social distancing, or having to get really creative with filling the absence of what we all know and love, which is live performance, and being in the room with one another. And we've talked quite a bit about this, you and I, but for our listeners, how have you experienced this challenge with our ensemble, and how has this impacted you, do you think, as artistic director, and what have you learned from it?
Sure, yeah.
Sorry,
it's been no, it's okay. I mean, it's real, and it's something that can't have just one or a definitive answer. The first thing I would say is that I think that I always felt like we were actually in an okay position to weather the storm. In the sense that in this particular case, I think our relative youth as an ensemble, right, like having just finished our second season at the time this hit, we were still had the ability to be flexible and adaptable, and we had an infrastructure that was developing, which also meant that it could change. One of the other things that I really felt at the beginning was I really struggled with what to do immediately. And, there was a huge push around April and then into May, um, to be producing content that, could be distributed purely virtually. And in that case, when, we really couldn't even be in the room together, right? Like recording chamber concerts over Zoom and that kind of thing. And I'm not opposed to that. But one of the decisions that I sort of made implicitly at the beginning, and to be completely honest, this came both in part out of a strategic decision for the ensemble, but also just sort of like exasperation, like in my own personal life and in the in the music world as a whole. I mean, like it was so world altering all of a sudden that I was just sort of like I don't know what to do until we settle down. So that was another part of the reason that I felt like I couldn't like produce anything. But I was very focused on first letting this, in whatever way we could make it, force it to be a growth opportunity. And I think that really played out in two ways. One, it gave us time, as you know, to expand and solidify our administrative structure, um, which ended up being really helpful. It was something that we were, going to do. But what this allowed us to do was do it in a context where there weren't immediate deliverables and pressures. We could do it during a space when, not like we had anything else going on. So we could sit and brainstorm and really figure out how we were going to work. And then in terms of when it came time for producing content, what I wanted to be sure was that we didn't do like a carbon copy worse version of what a live performance is. I was really committed to the idea that we should do something that was like suitable for the mediums that we could use, and that was, if anything, made better given the context that we were living through, as in like, the way we were delivering the art, or it allowed us to do projects that were particularly suitable to this time. I think that the projects we ended up doing did reflect that. So in September, we did an outdoor performance of Julius Eastman's Feminine. And that ended up, I think the project was better for having been outdoors, because what happened was we played it outside in a park, and there were some people there who came because they know us or know Julius Eastman and wanted to hear this piece. But the vast majority of people who were there were, park goers who did not expect to be going to a concert, but heard us and stayed for a little bit or the whole thing. And we at one point had like kids running around and dancing in front of the ensemble, which was absolutely adorable.
The proposal, don't forget that.
Oh, right. There was a wedding proposal that happened during our sound check. So yes. That was great. Yes, she said yes. We wish them well.
Maybe we'll be their wedding band.
Maybe. But so in that event, like at least I felt like, we could have done an outdoor performance before. It would have been cool. But I think there was something like particularly fulfilling about doing it in such a public way, and in a way that engaged, like that really engaged more people than we may have otherwise been able to, and that provided both an informative experience in that these audience members walked away knowing more about the wonderful composer Julius Eastman, but also an enjoyable, cathartic performance experience for a city that has been so deprived of that over the past year. And then with this project, I the more I think about it, I think there's something to be said for the sort of intimate way in which one views a streaming concert, right? Like this is not going to be viewed by a group of people collectively sitting in the same room. It's going to be viewed by individuals and individual families sitting in front of one computer or TV screen. And so in a way, like it's an opportunity for a much more intimate and private exploration and reflection on loss and what this year has meant, that I think might even be a more effective version of presenting this program than a traditional in-person concert. And not to mention the fact that this does open up the possibility that it can reach many, many more people. You know, obviously this was happening a little bit before with live streams, but now more than ever, you know, you don't have to watch this. You can come to a BlackBox concert if you live anywhere in the world. You know, you don't have to live in New York. And so I think as artistic director, that's one big takeaway from this, is that idea of um, making the form through which you deliver the program that you're trying to do, or the piece or the kind of concert experience, it, making the form itself a part of the sort of idea of the program. You know, thinking like, how can this program and the effect that we wanted to have and the questions we want to ask, and the repertoire we want to play, you know, this kind of allows us to push the boundaries of, okay, and then what's the best concert form by which to achieve that? And so I think even after COVID, we'll be able to push the envelope a little bit. You know, is this a traditional concert, which is totally fine, or is this an outdoor concert, or is this something that really should be produced over a digital platform and distributed and doesn't need to be done live at all, or a hybrid? And so there are all these various ways. I think the big takeaway is, you know, just not just considering or not taking for granted the form of the concert, but thinking of that as part of the curatorial work of putting a program together that you're hoping asks certain questions and presents certain ideas.
Yeah, that's so fascinating. And that's a really good point that COVID, ironically, you know, opened up these opportunities that, you know, that's, I guess, the bright side of it. And I remember so vividly when we first started, you know, having our meetings as the, you know, exec team of sorts.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, we had the time finally to really, like, time has never stopped in that way, and that was such an odd sensation, but at the same time it allowed for all of this thinking. And you know, we just stopped and thought, and it's like, what can we do, and like, what are different things we can do? And you know, the creativity in that, like you said, there's now live performance has always been the default, so to speak. So now there are just so many other options and things to do and different ways to engage audiences. And that outdoor concert, that when we performed Eastman back in September, that was, I mean, the energy of that I'll never forget. That was so powerful. And you know, not only people are obviously starving for, you know, hearing music and being in the same space as each other, hearing it.
Mm-hmm.
And that was just such a moving thing. And even the fact that it was a play-in and just the spontaneity of it, and that was beautiful. And even just thinking about, you know, now obviously time is just such an enigma, but back in March, or you know, I think back to our last concert at Shapeshifter, and you know, it's always funny because people always talk about their COVID circles, so to speak, with like, you know, social circles. And I always joke with people that we're each other's like performance circle, because like our last concert we performed period was with each other, and then our first was with each other. And it's really surreal thinking about that. But and especially thinking when, you know, for our concert now this Saturday, when we were rehearsing for it some weeks ago now in Brooklyn, you know, being in the room all together at once for like in such a long time, that was so surreal and almost indescribable. And you know, I mean, people will never take for granted again, you know, seeing live music or rehearsing, you know, together. And you know, I forget, I was talking with someone about you know, like people, you would always say like, oh, like I have to go to rehearsal or something, you know, and now it's like, I get to go to rehearsal. You know,
absolutely.
like it's a totally different, you know, mindset shift and you know, big picture kind of perspective. So that's it's interesting.
It is, yeah. And one of the things that I found so personally validating, or fulfilling about the Julius Eastman program, and the reason I say personally is because I didn't know that this was the opportunity we were providing for people, but I didn't realize that for many attendees as well as musicians, because also the way we did this thing was we basically just like put out an open call for like anybody who has an instrument to come and play Julius Eastman, and like we'll rehearse, and it felt like a big risk. it felt very, but it also felt like a risk worth taking in this time. Um, and what I did not expect was for how many people it was their first live performance, um, since things, since, you know, the good times. Um, and
Back in the day.
back in the day, and you know, I'm really glad that we were able to do it in a safe way. I'm really glad that we were able to provide that experience for both musicians and audience members. And I guess I didn't really think about it going into it. I just was, you know, once we decided to do it, I was very like, okay, we're gonna like, these are the steps to producing a concert, and you know, going through, kind of just going through those motions. And then when you get to the day of, and you have these people who are like, this was so meaningful to me because I haven't had this experience since February. um I was like, wow, you know. And it was the same for me. It was, someone said that to me and then I thought, oh my god, neither have I.
Me too.
So yeah, yeah.
Yeah, it's crazy. So, so with that, let's shift gears a little bit, and
Mhm.
we'll talk about the next piece that we'll play a little bit of, and we touched on this a little bit before as well, which is Brittany Green's multimedia work, Maps,
Yes,
and featuring, ironically, you, me, and Jordan
yes,
Bartow, our beloved
yes.
cellist, and performing in it. And so
Hmm.
before we play it, what is an aspect of this piece that struck you when programming it for this concert? Because it's a little bit different than the others, featuring the multimedia aspect with the video with the gorgeous graphic design that interacts
Hmm.
with the sound so interestingly. And
Yeah.
why don't you tell us a little bit even about the uniqueness of the score and the experience playing it, if you're so inclined?
Sure, yeah. So this piece actually is really, really suitable for a video concert because it comes with a video that Brittany J. Green made herself. And so because of that, like, this will be, all the other pieces on the concert are going to be, you know, filmed presentations of a concert performance. We'll have like some different camera angles and that sort of stuff, but it's going to be similar to the experience of just sitting in an audience. But this is different because if we performed this live, we might be able to project the video somewhere, but it wouldn't be, you know, contained in and of itself as the video with the music, and that's the full experience of the piece, which I think is really cool. And so in that sense, the piece works really well for the context of a video concert. Um, I didn't necessarily program it for that reason. I programmed it because I really resonated with the ideas that Brittany was trying to communicate here. And to just read from her program note, Brittany says that, you know, the piece is inspired by the poem Maps by Yesenia Montilla, and the piece is broken into 4 sections, each of which is defined by a quote from the poem. And Brittany writes that each section portrays a step in the process of what could happen when we remove borders that we allow to define us. And so I found that idea really provocative, but I also found it really suitable in sort of the narrative of this concert, reflecting on loss and uh, the interconnectedness of humanity. To, I guess that sounds very deep, but that's, you know,
Love deep.
yeah, exactly. So the way the piece works formally is it is broken into 4 sections, right? Each based on a quote from the poem. Um, and Brittany actually gives a color chart, where each color is associated with a pitch, and then each instrument distributes their assigned pitch based on what they see in the graph of the score. It's a graphic score, so you're only looking at various blocks of colors with each instrument assigned to one block, and that block might change color over the duration of um, that period of time that is indicated. And so the player would then change pitch according to the color changes. And so what happens is, you know, this allows Brittany to give kind of guideposts to guide the performer's improvisation, but it also means that, you know, the duration with which the performers move between notes Not to mention the timbre and the textures and the different effects that they can use in doing so. All of that happens organically and in a really improvisatory way during the performance. So performing a piece like this is really interesting, and it's something that I actually struggled for a long time to feel comfortable performing pieces like this as someone who, you know, as most musicians are, come from the tradition of like you're performing notated music or traditionally notated music. Um, but I think the key here is that once you sort of figure out like the logistics of the improvisation scheme, so to speak, you're like, okay, like this is how this works. I'm reading this and I interpret it this way, and I'm playing these notes at this time, and then oh, this is my next pitch block, right? And so once you sort of figure out how it works, the challenge is you just have to let yourself be vulnerable to whatever is happening between you and the other people in the room who also have internalized the directions of the score in the same way. Um, and it's really funny. I mean, I feel like performing this kind of music, it's funny, and you can attest to this too. Like in rehearsals, as in performance, I feel like it always sort of goes how it goes. And then there's this moment where you look up at each other at the end and you either think that felt good or that didn't feel as good. And like, it's kind of just that it's like an instinctive thing. Um, Luckily, when we did this take, we all looked up at each other after and we're like, that felt really good. And we felt really energized by it. So, but yeah, I mean, it's just, it's a really, it's a really beautiful piece, both to perform, but also it's just such a beautiful way, I think, to communicate the ideas in this poem, Maps. And I think by setting up this sort of improvisatory scheme for musicians to follow, that demands that they experience the interconnectedness of the other people in the room. That's a really interesting way to sort of like metaphorize the idea of removing the boundaries between each other. And so that was why I wanted to include this piece on the program.
Yeah, and there's so many great points you said there. The vulnerability aspect of aleatoric pieces and open scores is something I so love about them. And that's partly why, you know, compositionally I tend to write in that way. And even fluting, I love to, you know, improvise and multi-track myself or something. And it's just, there's something about, you know, and especially I love that 2/3 of the performers are here. So
You should have brought Jordan.
No,
sorry, Jordan.
Sorry, Jordan. Guess next time.
Yeah.
But yeah, I love that, you know, when we were rehearsing it, you know, it took time to get comfortable with it. And the fact that it was so open, you know, we kind of had to find our own groove with it, and you know, feel each other out. And I love those moments like you were talking about of connection, where it's like you make eye contact or you kind of do something at the same time, and then you kind of feel out the direction with each other. And it's such an active channel of communication that is so unique to that style. And I just, I'm in love with it. But yeah, back to that first take, for those of you who are going to tune in with us this Saturday, it's so funny that, yeah, we rehearsed this so much. And, you know, I think this kind of took the most thought, sort of, I feel like. And the day of, like, we did it one take, we're just like, yes, that's it. I can feel it.
Yeah, we really just felt it.
It just, it happened, and it was great. So.
Yeah, and to your point, I mean, I think the great thing about these pieces is, to some extent, this is always true, but with pieces like this, you just truly do not know what's going to happen. Like, you might have some preconceived idea of what your map through the piece is, but everybody is responding to each other in real time. But neither individually nor as a group do you know how this is going to go. And so, yeah, it's really visceral and really exciting to be a performer in that experience. And I think the product here is a really reflective and interesting piece for the audience to experience as well, especially with the video, Brittany's video, which accompanies it.
Yes, Absolutely. So Leonard, thank you so much for chatting with me on my show, apart from our own chats.
Of
And
course.
and just one more time, can you say the details of the upcoming show we have this Saturday for our listeners and how they can stream it?
Absolutely, yes. So this show is going to be streamed on Saturday night at 8 p.m. And what we're doing is we are setting it up as a YouTube premiere. So the concert will be made available on YouTube on Saturday night at 8 p.m. Now, in order to have the full concert experience, what we are encouraging people to do is RSVP on the Eventbrite link that we have set up. It's a free concert, by the way. There is an opportunity to give a donation, which of course we always appreciate, but it's a free donation only concert. And so what you can do is go to our website, blackboxensemble.org, click events, and then you'll see December 12th elegy, hit RSVP, and that will take you to the Eventbrite link where you can RSVP for the event. When you RSVP, you're gonna get or rather, you'll be added to an email list. And then before the concert, we are going to not only email everybody the link to the YouTube premiere through the Eventbrite channel, but we're also going to send you a Zoom link because in order to create a sense of a kind of concert experience, we're going to have a Zoom lobby pre and post concert, which anyone who wants to tune in for the premiere will be able to join if they want to. Obviously, you don't have to, but it'll be an option. So you can also get all of this information, as I said, on our website, blackboxensemble.org/events. You can also go to our Instagram at BlackBox New Music or our Facebook page, BlackBox Ensemble. We also have an event listed on our Facebook page, and we'll post the YouTube premiere and Zoom links there as well. So there are tons of ways that you can figure out how to get access to this event. And yeah, we would really love for you to join us for this wonderful music and a program that I think we're all really proud to have produced and have been a part of right now.
Amazing. Well, I know I can't wait, and I will be in that Zoom lobby. So,
as will I.
Great. So
this is nice because usually the musicians have tons to be nervous about before a concert, or like, but now we can actually just sit back and enjoy the experience too. So that's sort of fun.
I know, it's such a weird, yeah, it's like experiencing yourself in real time. Like it was so funny, that reminds me, I had the weirdest like radio, I guess, realization at the beginning of COVID, where I heard myself in the car. I was driving and I turned myself on in the car, and I'm like, I can't be in two places at once. So.
Right, and that wouldn't have happened before because you recorded everything live.
Exactly. So yeah, I guess anything's possible now. So we can watch ourselves perform and kick back and relax while doing it. So
yeah.
Yes,
be
very
in the
much
Zoom lobby with everyone else.
Yes.
Me too.
Alrighty. Well, thank you so much again, Leonard. This was a blast, as
Thank
always.
you, Annie. This was a blast as always, and it's been. I am so glad that you have seen the full journey of BlackBox Ensemble from that first email I sent you, which you got, to today and beyond. I mean, you've been not just our flutist, but now you're doing marketing and social media, but just in general, you've been an advocate, a confidant, and a really vital part of just making the ensemble what it is, contributing not just your talents, but your ideas. And I'm so glad that you're with us, and really glad to be able to be on your program today and talk with you about it. It was really fun.
Oh, well, thank you so much. It is my honor and my pleasure.
Oh.